If you want to know what $3 billion smells like, it is not old leather or expensive cologne. It smells like ozone, lukewarm filtered water, and the antiseptic silence of a conference room on the 45th floor where the air conditioning is set specifically to keep human empathy at absolute zero. I was sitting there, staring at the signature line on a contract thick enough to stop a bullet, feeling the hum of adrenaline right before the ink hits the paper. This was the culmination of 6 months of my life spent in airport lounges and negotiating with regulatory bodies that make the tax authorities look like a charity. My name is Devin Cole. I am the strategic partnerships lead for a technology firm in New York. I am the mechanic who goes down into the engine room to make sure the turbines are turning while the captain waves at the icebergs. The telecom deal was supposed to be impossible, but I knew their lead negotiator had a weakness for strict punctuality. For 6 months, I was precise and boring. Today, boring was about to pay for the new wing of our headquarters. Gregory Vance, our vice president, sat across from me, sweating through an expensive shirt. He looked like he was vibrating. That is the thing about the visionaries in this industry. They love the money, but vomit at the sight of the work required to get it. I slid the pen across the mahogany table. The European counterpart, a man of gray steel and silence, nodded at me. Not Gregory, but at me. That split second of validation, where competence speaks louder than a corporate title, was worth all the sleepless nights. If you are listening to this, and you have ever had to save your boss from a disaster without them even realizing they were in danger, you know how satisfying it is when justice finally catches up to them. It is cheaper than therapy and much more satisfying than watching them trip over their own arrogance. The telecom deal closed. Champagne popped. Gregory was suddenly the loudest man in the room, slapping backs and talking about synergy like he did not spend the last 3 meetings scrolling through golf course reviews on his tablet. I stood by the window looking out at the Manhattan skyline, feeling that quiet, steel-reinforced satisfaction. I thought the hard part was over and I could finally take a weekend off. I was an idiot. The hangover lasted 48 hours. On Monday morning, Gregory called an emergency meeting for the executive team. Usually, these meetings were just Gregory liking the sound of his own voice, but today the energy was frantic. He walked in with a young woman who looked like she had been generated by an artificial intelligence, prompted with arrogant influencer with a business degree. She wore an aggressively sharp blazer and heels designed for sitting, not walking. "Team," Gregory said, his voice cracking just a little, the way it always did when he was doing something he knew was defensible only by blood. "I want you to meet our new director of innovation. This is Chloe." Of course, her name was Chloe Vance. She did not smile, she smirked. It was the kind of smirk you see on people who have never heard the word no without immediately following it with a phone call to a family lawyer. Gregory explained that Chloe came to us straight from graduate school. He did not mention her previous experience, mostly because her professional profile probably listed Chief Vibe Officer at a startup that folded in 3 months. "Hi, everyone," Chloe said, her voice carrying a heavy vocal fry. "I have been looking at the workflows here, and honestly, it feels a little dinosaur. We are going to pivot. We are going to disrupt ourselves before the market disrupts us." I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. The chief financial officer stared at his coffee cup. The general counsel aggressively cleaned his glasses. No one said anything. They all knew who she was. This was not a hire. It was an inheritance. "Devin," Gregory said, pointing a sweaty finger at me. "Chloe is going to be shadowing you on the upcoming Thorn Capital investment round. I want her to get her hands dirty on the big stuff immediately." The Thorn Capital investment was $3 billion. Victor Thorn, the man who ran the fund, was a legendary figure who ate executives for breakfast. Gregory wanted to throw this glitter-covered grenade into the bunker with the most dangerous investor in the hemisphere. "Shadowing?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Gregory, the Thorn deal is in a delicate phase. Victor Thorn does not like new faces. He will love this face," Chloe interrupted, actually winking in a board meeting. "Besides, Devin, no offense, but your strategy seems a little traditional. I think Victor wants to see the future." "The future," I repeated, deadpan. "Exactly," she said, putting her shoes on the chair next to mine. "I am here to bring the juice. I looked at Gregory. He looked away. He knew he was handing the keys of a Ferrari to a toddler who had only driven a tricycle, but he was weak and she was his blood. And in corporate offices, blood is thicker than competence. I did not fight. I just nodded, picked up my notebook, and wrote a single line in my notebook: document everything. The degradation of a high-functioning system is usually slow, like rust. But with Chloe, it was fast. It started small. She would reply all to email chains she had not read, adding thoughts that were just rewordings of the subject line. She scheduled brainstorming sessions at 8 in the morning on Mondays, demanded a new project management software that was essentially a glorified to-do list with emojis, and referred to our engineers as creatives, which irritated them so much that productivity dropped by 15% in her first week. The real disruption began on operational calls. We were dealing with Mr. Go, a logistics partner in Singapore, a relationship I had cultivated over 4 years of midnight calls. We were discussing supply chain latency, boring, critical stuff. I was guiding the conversation toward a 4% margin adjustment. Then Chloe chimed in. Guys, she interrupted, her voice booming over the speaker. Let us zoom out. What is the moonshot here? Why are we talking about shipping containers when we should be talking about drone swarms? Silence on the line. The kind of silence that costs money. Chloe, I said, hitting the mute button on my end. We are discussing maritime law and customs clearance. Drones are not legal in this airspace. Not with that attitude, she scoffed, unmuting. Singapore team, we need to be agile. Forget the containers. Let us ideate on a digital-first delivery mechanism. Mr. Go cleared his throat. Miss Vance, are you suggesting we digitize physical hardware? Exactly. She snapped her fingers. Now you are getting it. I saw the bridge burning. I physically leaned forward, blocking her from the microphone, and went into full damage control. I spent 20 minutes apologizing in code, soothing egos, and walking back her insanity without calling my vice president's daughter an idiot. When the call ended, I was sweating. That went great, Chloe said, scrolling through social media. I really felt we shook up their paradigm. You almost lost us the Singapore partnership, I said. You worry too much, Devon, she said. Dad says you are risk-averse. That is why you are still in execution and not vision. I went straight to Gregory. She is dangerous, Gregory. She does not understand the product or the regulatory environment. She just insulted Mr. Go. Gregory sighed, rubbing his temples. She is just finding her rhythm, Devon. She has energy. You have been doing this a long time. Maybe you are just a little set in your ways. Just guide Chloe. Be a mentor. I cannot mentor a hurricane, Gregory. Just make it work, he snapped, his eyes flashing with defensiveness. She is family. And there it was. Logic did not matter. Profit did not matter. Only her DNA mattered. 2 days later, the real bomb dropped. I came into the office to find our engineering lead, Bradley Finch, banging his head against his desk. What happened? I asked. Your shadow happened. Bradley groaned. Chloe sent out the preliminary technical specifications to the Thorn Capital team last night without copying you. My stomach dropped. What did she send? She promised them the Nebula X integration by the 3rd quarter, Bradley said. The Nebula X integration is theoretical, I whispered. We have not even built the prototype. Well, she told them it is ready for scalability, Bradley said. If we do not deliver that during their audit, the due diligence fails. The $3 billion goes away. I opened the secure server logs and found the email, sent at 2 in the morning, full of typos and catastrophic promises. You are literally crushing the technology game right now, she had written. Nebula X is ready to go. I could let the deal implode and watch the company collapse. Our team was running on fumes, and Bradley was drinking his 4th energy drink of the day. The engineers were practically sleeping under their desks, but we knew that if we did not pull off this miracle, our stock options would be worthless. So, I fixed it. I spent the next 3 nights in the office. I pulled in favors from 3 different research labs. I reworked the definitions of integration in the technical addendums to make them legally ambiguous enough to cover our assets, but specific enough to pass a glance. I built a bridge out of smoke and mirrors to cover the chasm she had dug. I did not sleep, surviving on black coffee and absolute focus. By Friday morning, the data room was updated. The lie was sanitized into a projected roadmap. Chloe walked in at 10:30 in the morning, holding a green juice. "Hey, Devin," she chirped. "Did you see the response from the Thorn Capital team? They are excited. Told you I had the magic touch." She thought her charm had worked. I looked at her, and for the first time I was done. I opened a hidden folder on my encrypted drive labeled Contingency. I dragged the original email she sent, the log of my corrections, and the messages where Bradley Finch confirmed the technology did not exist. "Good job, Chloe," I said, smiling a smile that did not reach my eyes. "You really shook things up." I saved the folder. The paper trail had begun. She wanted to play visionary. Fine, I was going to play forensic accountant. And in corporate politics, the accountant always wins. Victor Thorne was not a man who appeared on magazine covers. He was the man who owned the publishing houses that printed the magazines. He was 70 years old, wore suits that cost more than my college education, and had eyes that looked like two pieces of flint waiting to strike a spark. He did not speak often, and when he did, he never repeated himself. Dealing with Victor Thorne was like playing chess with a grand master who was also holding a loaded gun under the table. The preparation for the $3 billion investment meeting was a nightmare. Gregory was hyperventilating in his office, popping medication like breath mints. Chloe, on the other hand, was terrifyingly calm. She had spent the last week creating a slide presentation that was 90% graphics and 10% incoherent gibberish. She insisted on leading the pitch. "I have a connection with Victor," she claimed. "I can feel his energy. He wants to be inspired." "He wants a return on equity," Chloe, I said, trying to review the financial audits one last time. "He does not care about inspiration. He cares about earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization." "Boring," she sang. "Devin, you have to trust the narrative." So, we walked into the boardroom. The air was thin on the 45th floor. Victor Thorne sat at the head of the table, flanked by 4 lawyers who looked like they were bred in a lab to find loopholes. The lawyers flanking Victor Thorne were dressed in matching charcoal suits, looking like a wall of expensive dark fabric. They did not move, did not whisper, and did not show a single drop of warmth. I took my usual seat at Victor's right hand, the operator's seat. Gregory sat on the left. Chloe stood at the front, clicking her presentation clicker like it was a detonator. She started talking. It was a train wreck. It was a masterclass in vacuous corporate speak. She used words like synergy, holistic ecosystem, and adjacent leverage. In the first 3 minutes, she flashed slides of happy people holding phones, stock photos of diverse handshakes, and a graph that had no vertical axis, just an arrow pointing up labeled success. I watched Victor. He did not blink. He did not take notes. He just stared at Chloe. His face was a mask of absolute neutrality. It was the kind of silence that makes lesser men crumble. But Chloe was immune to social cues. She kept going. She pivoted to a commemorative digital token strategy. "It is going to drive engagement through the roof," she announced. "It is the metaverse, Victor. It is now." Victor slowly turned his head. He did not look at Chloe. He looked at Gregory. "Gregory," Victor said. His voice was soft, dry, like old parchment. "Are we selling technology, or are we selling cartoons?" Gregory turned pale. It is a multi-pronged approach, Victor. Chloe is just highlighting the aspirational verticals." Victor repeated, tasting the word like it was spoiled milk. Then he looked at me. For the first time in the meeting, his eyes had life in them. He looked at me with a question that did not need to be spoken. "Are you seeing this?" I gave him the smallest nod, a microscopic incline of the chin. "I see it. I fixed the data room. The numbers are real. Even if this presentation is a hallucination." Victor turned his attention to the physical term sheet in front of him. It was a 100-page document that I had drafted, redrafted, and memorized. He flipped past the financials. He flipped past the regulatory compliance. He stopped on page 84. I knew exactly what was on page 84. Section 12, paragraph C, Human Capital Retention. Victor took a gold fountain pen out of his pocket. He circled something on the page. He did not write a note, just circled it twice. Then he looked up at Chloe, who was now rambling about viral loops. "Miss Vance," Victor interrupted. "Call me Chloe," she smiled. "Miss Vance," he continued, ignoring her request. "Your enthusiasm is noted. Please sit down. I have questions about the supply chain integration." He turned his body away from her, effectively cutting her out of existence, and faced me. Devon, the latency figures in the Singapore market, explain them. Chloe's smile faltered. She stood there, clicker in hand, awkwardly frozen. I can take that, she stammered. The moonshot is… Devon, Victor said, sharper this time. I leaned forward. The latency is down 4% due to a renegotiated customs protocol, Victor. We sacrificed some margin on the front end to guarantee 99.9% uptime. It is in Appendix B. Victor nodded. Good. Smart trade. He closed the folder. He kept his hand resting on it. Specifically, his hand was resting on the section he had circled on page 84. Chloe sat down, sulking, checking her phone. Gregory wiped sweat from his forehead. They thought they had survived. They thought Victor was just being old school, but I knew better. Victor Thorne did not circle things for fun. He had found the lever. He had found the one thing in that document that mattered more than the buzzwords or Gregory's desperate grin. He had found the key person clause. And as he looked at me one last time before ending the meeting, I realized he was just waiting to see if anyone was stupid enough to trigger it. The retaliation was clumsy, which made it all the more insulting. If you are going to remove someone in a corporate environment, you use a scalpel, not a rusty spoon. But Chloe was all blunt force trauma. It started the Tuesday after the pitch meeting. I tried to log into the shared executive calendar to schedule the follow-up diligence call with Victor's team. Access denied. A little red box popped up. Contact administrator. I tried to open the Thorne Capital final drafts folder on the secure server. I sat back in my chair, sipping my lukewarm coffee. I did not call support. I knew what this was. This was the digital equivalent of changing the locks while your spouse is at the grocery store. Then came the email. It was not from Chloe. It was from Gregory, but the syntax was all wrong. Gregory used commas like they were going out of style. This email was a stream of consciousness block of text. Subject: Organizational Restructuring and Vision. Devon, as we pivot toward the closing of the Thorne Capital investment, we are looking at streamlining our leadership optics. Chloe has expressed a desire to take point on the finalization phase to better align with the new innovation strategy. Given budget concerns and the need for a fresher narrative, your role is being reviewed for potential restructuring post-close. In the interim, please route all investor communications through Chloe directly. We appreciate your support in this transition. Restructuring, corporate speak for. We are going to fire you the second the check clears, but we need you to stay quiet until then. I read it twice. I felt the anger, hot and sharp in my chest. I had built this department. I had saved their partnership in Singapore. I had sanitized their data room. And now I was being pushed out because a 28-year-old with an ego the size of Manhattan felt threatened because the investor asked me a question instead of Gregory's daughter. But anger is a useless emotion in the boardroom. Anger makes you messy. Calculation makes you dangerous. I did not reply immediately. I swiveled my chair to my secondary monitor, the one connected to my personal hard drive. You see, I am not a rookie. I lived through the technology bubble collapse and the financial crash. I know that loyalty is a myth told by human resources departments to keep salaries low. I had been mirroring the entire negotiation history onto my private cloud for 6 months. Every email, every draft, every red line, every message where Chloe asked, "What does earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization mean?" I opened the folder. It was all there. The Nebula X lie she sent, the log of me fixing it, the transcript of the call where she insulted the Singapore team, and most importantly, the original term sheet where I had highlighted the clause Victor Thorne circled. I smiled. It was a cold, tight smile. I hit reply on Gregory's email. Gregory, understood. Efficient communication is key. I will direct all incoming queries to Chloe. Just to clarify, Chloe will be the sole signatory on the compliance deliverables for Thorne Capital. I want to ensure the chain of custody is clear for the audit. I pressed send. It was a trap, a beautiful, simple trap. By confirming she was the sole signatory, they were giving me a get-out-of-jail-free card for whatever disaster she was about to cause. And they were too blind to see it. 10 minutes later, Chloe walked by my glass-walled office. She did not look at me. She was talking loudly on her phone. Yeah, I am basically running the close. It is exhausting, but someone has to be the adult, right? She stopped, pivoted, and looked through the glass. She gave me a little wave, a dismissive, fingers-only wave, like you would wave at a goldfish in a tank. I waved back. That afternoon I went to the break room. A junior analyst, a young man named Toby Jenkins, whom I had trained, was there making tea. Toby looked around the break room once more, making sure Gregory's executive assistant was not lurking in the hallway. The kid was trembling, knowing that just speaking to me could put him on the restructuring list. He slid a folded piece of paper across the counter to me. I saw the draft organizational chart on the printer, Toby whispered, terrified. They are erasing you, Devin. It is not right. I took the paper. It was a printout of the new hierarchy. Chloe was at the top as Chief Strategy Officer. My name was not even on the page. Thanks, Toby, I said softly. Do not worry about it. What are you going to do? He asked. Are you going to sue? Lawsuits take too long, Toby, I said, putting the paper in my pocket, and they cost too much money. No, I am going to do something much worse. What? I am going to let them have exactly what they want. I walked back to my desk. My office hummed around me. I cleared my personal items. I took the photo of my dog. I took my lucky stapler. I left the desk bare except for the computer. They wanted to run the show. Fine. I was going to hand them the steering wheel. I just was not going to tell them that I had already cut the brake lines. The silence from the executive suite was deafening. For 3 days, they froze me out, hoping I would quit. I spent that time meeting with Julian Pierce, an independent board member who had always been skeptical of Chloe. I did not complain. I just handed him a timeline of Chloe's errors, including the false specifications and my revoked access. Julian read it, his face pale. I explained that if Chloe repeated her lies to Victor Thorne, the deal would collapse and our stock would drop 40%. When he asked why I was telling him, I said I wanted the board to know who was playing with matches. Soon after, I saw a misdirected calendar invite for the final signing meeting. I was excluded, but I knew the stage was set. Victor Thorne had emailed Gregory demanding all key roles be present, and Gregory lied, claiming the whole team would attend. On Friday, the office was decorated with celebratory balloons. Chloe breezed in, telling me to steer clear of the boardroom since it was only for key players. At 1:45, Victor arrived. As the boardroom door closed behind him, Gregory and Chloe, I stood up. Holding my manila folder with the term sheet, I walked past the assistant who tried to block me, pushed open the doors, and walked inside. Gregory froze when I walked in, while Chloe demanded I leave. I walked over and sat next to Victor. Chloe turned to Victor, claiming I had a hard time letting go, then looked at me and said, "You are fired, leave immediately." I did not move. I looked at Victor and said, "It appears I am no longer an employee." Victor uncapped his pen, looked at Chloe, and asked, "Who is fired?" Chloe pointed at me. Victor closed his folder, capped his pen, and stood up. "Then this meeting is over," he said. Chloe shrieked, insisting the deal was done. Victor stopped. He looked at Gregory. "You did not read the term sheet, did you, Gregory?" "We all read it," Gregory gasped. "Not closely enough," Victor said. He opened my folder to page 84. "Devin, would you like to explain Section 12? I leaned forward. Section 12, Paragraph C, the Key Person Dependency Clause. It states that the investment of $3 billion is contingent upon the continued employment and operational authority of specific key personnel deemed critical to the asset's stability. I pointed to the names. There was Gregory's name, and right below it was mine, Devin Cole, Head of Strategic Partnerships. "If Devin leaves," Victor said, "for any reason including termination, the deal is void. The offer is withdrawn." Chloe stared at the page. Gregory grabbed the paper, his hands shaking. "I thought it was standard boilerplate." "I do not do boilerplate," Victor said. "I invest in competence, and the only competent person I have met here is the woman you just fired. So, Gregory, you have a choice. You can walk away from $3 billion, or you can walk away from your daughter's tantrums." Gregory was doing the math. $3 billion meant his retirement. On the other side was Chloe's ego. "We can fix this," Gregory said, pleading. "Devin, we did not mean it. It was a misunderstanding. She fired me, Gregory. In front of the investor. We rescind it," Gregory cried. "You are not fired. You are promoted. Chief Operating Officer. Whatever you want." Chloe gasped. "Dad, what are you doing?" Gregory spun on his daughter. "Shut up, Chloe." "Excuse me," she gasped. "Shut up," Gregory roared. You have no idea what you are doing. You almost cost us everything. He turned to Victor. She stays. Devon stays. Chloe will step down, Dad, Chloe whispered, tears welling up. Step down now, Gregory said, or you are fired. Victor looked at me. Devon, is this acceptable to you? I looked at Gregory, broken. I looked at Chloe, humiliated. I could have let it burn, but my team of 50 people needed this funding. I have conditions, I said. Full autonomy on the operational budget. Chloe is removed from the building completely. No consulting fees, no board seat. And a renegotiation of my equity stake, triple the vesting. Gregory did not even blink. Done, I turned to Victor. Then we have a deal. Victor smiled. Excellent. He slid the pen to Gregory. Sign. Gregory signed. Now you, Devon. Victor said. I signed my name next to his signature. The ink flowed smoothly. Chloe turned and ran out of the room, slamming the door. The meeting disbanded. Victor nodded to me and left. Gregory sat slumped in his chair. You played a hard game, Devon, he whispered. I did not play a game, Gregory, I said, collecting my folder. I did my job. I walked out of the boardroom. I heard sobbing from the stairwell. Chloe was sitting on the concrete steps, crying into her phone. She looked up, her face twisted in hatred. You ruined my life, she spat. You are just a bureaucrat. I saved the company, Chloe, I said softly. There is a difference, but a piece of advice, read the contracts. All of them, even the boring parts. I walked out onto the street. The air was cold. My phone buzzed. The press release had gone out. Devon Cole promoted to Chief Operating Officer. There was no mention of Chloe Vance. The scales had tipped back. I hailed a cab, ready to go home. The fine print held up. Some people confuse nepotism with power until real money walks in and reminds them who actually holds the pen.